Hey vinyl community, welcome back. This is Luke with Hot Wax and Cool Vinyl. This is the 10th and final installment in my top 100 albums. This is 10 through 1. Just a quick recap or reflections, if you will. It was truly enjoyable doing this top 100. Close to cathartic. Memories were tremendous and a lot of fun, and one memory led to another, so it was just really an enjoyable exercise in doing this top 100 one that I recommend you do if you are so inclined. Just understand that, as I said, it's a little lengthy, and albeit enjoyable, it really takes a lot more out of you than you think. Not physically, obviously, but memory-wise. As you go through each album and you pull them out, and you're just like, oh, this one or that one, this one or that one, and each album has its own meaning to you, or, you know, how do you determine which is better? You know, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club, or, you know, whatever album is your favorite. So, it was a lot of fun for me. A special thanks to everyone who commented in particular continuously. Bill over at Vinylverse, Tim, DJ High Noon, sorry Tim, Andre over at Linda Lag, Gino from Long Island, who doesn't have a channel, but he's a big vinyl guy and he watches a lot of the other videos. And he always has been commenting on my stuff since, I think, my very first video. So to all of you, and Liz over out in the West Coast, who's also always commenting, thank you so much. It made it so much more enjoyable when I got feedback, whether it be positive or whether it be just kind of like, you know, perplexing, you know, why on earth did you choose that? It was just a lot of enjoyable feedback from other record collectors and things of that nature. So let us begin without further ado. If you don't know by now, I choose my album as based on either a memory or an emotion or a reason, a moment in my life that album fits into and reminds me of. So that said, number 10, Cheap Trick's Live at Budokan. This album, recorded in '78, came out in '79. In 1979, as by now quite a few of you know, because I'm old, I was a sophomore in high school. And at the beginning of 1979, I was a freshman in high school. And, you know, as when 79, 80, I became a sophomore. Very much, at the beginning of 1979, still very much into pop music. You know, I knew rock had one or two rock songs that I liked, but still very much into pop music. And then as 1979 went forward, as I mentioned, some other albums came out, and it kind of transformed my view from pop to rock. I just got it better. This was, of course, one of them. The song Surrender has been my favorite, one of my favorites from this record since I got it. Good Evening, Ladies and Gentlemen is also another great song from this album. There are very few bad tracks on this, you know. Ain't That a Shame was the one that I think everyone, well, Surrender and Ain't That a Shame are the two that everyone remembers. But, and I Want You to Want Me. There's three of them, actually. Again, you know, one of those albums that I can point to, I guess there's maybe 30 of them in total, but one of them that I can point to and saying, yes, that was one of the reasons I started listening to rock music, that album. So this one comes in at number 10 for that reason. Cheap Trick's at Budokan, to this day, one of my favorite records. Number 9, I'm going to preface it by saying, great many of you may not understand why it's here or anything about it, but I'm going to show you on the Rocky Horror Picture Show at number 9, and I like it a lot. And No, I mean, I really like it a lot. And the only one you don't see here, because I just, wasn't going to pull it out, was the original Roxy cast. I'm looking for the Australian cast album as well. But Rocky Horror Picture Show came out, and also 1979, midnight theater, midnight showings. It was a fan participation movie. I had never seen or experienced anything like it before in my life. I had the good fortune of being friends with some people who were seniors in high school in 1979, and I was a young sophomore. So us leaving aside the fact that I felt so cool, because I was hanging out with the older kids, but more importantly, they took me to see the midnight showing of Rocky Horror Picture Show. It was a blast. I've seen it countless times since. And again, Rocky Horror was just an amazing experience to have as a young person, male, female, didn't really matter. I mean, water pistols, toilet paper, lighters, fan participation. We knew all the fan parts all the parts that the audience was supposed to yell. We knew them all. We had them memorized, and it was just imagine a movie theater full of people all yelling "say it" at the same time, and each part of the movie was just excellent. I recall seeing it in West Hampton here on Long Island, but my friends went to see it in the city, and it was insane. I had a similar experience in Hollywood. I went to see it in Hollywood, California. It's the first time I saw an entire movie theater run up on stage into the time warp in front of the screen, along with the characters in the movie. Just really an amazing, fun time. And midnight shows were very popular. Led Zeppelin's Song Remains the Same. A lot of other rock movies were all done midnight shows. Rocky Horror was the main event of all midnight shows. I mean, no matter whether it was in Hollywood, out in California, whether it was in the city, whether it was out here in East End of Long Island, Nassau County, everybody knew midnight shows meant Rocky Horror. There was no question. I went to a midnight show. Oh, you went to see Rocky this weekend. How was it? Did you dress up? Did you do the time warp? That sort of thing. If you've ever seen Rocky Horror in that vein, leave me a comment. I'd love to know your experiences of it. So, Rocky Horror is number 9. Number 8, Deep Purple's Made in Japan. This record is, again, what I would consider a gateway record for me. And this one has a particular memory attached to it, just besides from being a gateway record. First time I heard it, I was in Italy, in Rome. I stayed at my cousin's house. Now, my cousin's my age, but he always was so much more mature in his musical taste than I was. I mean, I basically idolized him when we were growing up because of his musical taste. I mean, I'm listening to whatever pop song is on the radio, and he's got Uma Guma playing on his system, and he's just light years ahead of where I was. So he puts on Made in Japan and Smoke on the Water, and I'm like, yeah, okay, Smoke on the Water, that's a good song, I like it. He goes, no. Listen to all the album. Listen to Highway Star. Listen to Space Truck, and listen to My Woman's from Tokyo. Listen to the lyrics. Listen to his pitch, his voice. Listen to the power chords. He sold me. I still liked pop, but all of a sudden, I like Deep Purple. And didn't like them before. I like them now. I mean, not that I didn't like them. I didn't know them before. I only knew Smoke on the Water. Now I know a lot of their stuff. And it's just a tremendous live album as well. It's so well done as far as production value is concerned. It's just a really well played album. Well done. I like it. I know Machine Head is a go-to for a lot of people, and for me as well. But Machine Head doesn't have any hold any personal emotion. This does. So at number 8, Deep Purple's Made in Japan. Number 7, News of the World. Now I'm going to immediately omit We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions. I understand. They've been played to death. As rock anthems go, they have just been absolutely played the hell out of it. Okay, that's great. This album still is a gateway album for me. And leaving aside the 2 songs I just mentioned, Sheer Heart Attack was a great song and is a great song. But my favorite song on this album has always been Spread Your Wings. I was not a ballad guy. I didn't like ballads in pop, and I didn't like ballads in rock. I always thought they were sappy, and I thought you weren't supposed to like a ballad if you were a rocker. And that was the mindset. Well, I couldn't help it. I loved Spread Your Wings. Transformative. It was okay, because it was on News of the World. It was on a Queen album. It was a rock album, so I can like a ballad. So Spread Your Wings, and it wasn't a sappy ballad. It was just a regular ballad. And so I love this album. I love it for a whole host of reasons. I mean, the cover alone is just enough to make me want to buy the record in the first place. The music, the Queen was not quite at their peak height yet, but this album certainly lent to that, because subsequent to that, when you get into jazz and all the other albums, Queen just became the superstars that we know them today. But what started it, Bohemian Rhapsody brought them onto the stage, it launched them. But this one really put him over the top as far as superstardom is concerned. And it's just a great record. And again, it's a gateway record for me. All these albums came out at about the same time period. And the same time period for me, I was 15, going on 16, that era, and I was still 14, 15, and 16, those 3 years, very much, the early part of those years, and very much into pop music. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with pop, but I wound up really enjoying rock, and then punk rock, etc. But each section of my life, or each transformation, Argent, for example, the very first song I remember listening to, liking, and wanting to listen to over and over again. Pop music at that time, Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog. It was number 1 in 1971. I mean, it was number 1. As a matter of fact, it was number 1 this week in 1971. So, I mean, it just was one of those moments, and those were my pop moments, you know. And then from there, rock and rock moments, and rock became such a large part of my life from the time I was a young man to now, that each one of these albums lent its way to it. What number is this? Number 6. Damn the Torpedoes. The third album, but it may as well have been his debut album, or their debut album. Tom Petty's writing is phenomenal. I'm sorry, we lost a really good one when he passed away this year. This album also, when it first came out, it almost had a Cars feel to. No, I don't recall whether the Cars came out first or Tom Petty, but they all, to me, they had a very similar sound, and it was just really an interesting new sound. It wasn't the standard rock sound. It was just kind of like really new, and it was kind of fun. But leaving aside the fact that it's just a sublime album, this one really, the memory that's the most strongest involved in this is actually a radio station DJ who, while playing one of the songs from this album, said thank God his father talked him out of it, and then went on to explain that Tom Petty's the original band, or his original band, he wanted to name Mudcrotch. and his father's talked him out of it, and so they wound up being Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and that's the band we kind of grew to love. But I think before he passed away, he actually put together a band called Mudcrotch. But number 6, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. A fantastic record. Number 5, The Wall. Okay, so my very first Pink Floyd album I ever purchased. As mentioned, with Made in Japan, my cousin in Rome, who I idolized, musically speaking, had played Uma Guma, and I really didn't get it. And that was still playing a little bit way above here, from a pop kid, not really getting it. But he had talked so much about Pink Floyd that when The Wall came out later on that year, my folks were going to go visit my family in Ronkonkoma, and there was the Wall was in Ronkonkoma, and Sam Goody, the record store, the only record store that realistically had access to, was there as well. So I talked my father into going to the Smith Haven Mall first. I told him I promised I'll be in and out. Sam Goody said, I know exactly what I want. So I bought The Wall, and I remember sitting in the car, parked out front of my aunt's house in Ronkonkoma. My mom and dad and my brother had already gone inside. They were, having regular family time with their elders. And here I am sitting outside in the car, like 15 years old, 14 years old, whatever it was. And I'm like staring at this album. And I'm like I knew that I had gotten it before my cousin did, because they were released in the United States much before they were released in Italy. And I was trying to figure out a way to understand it, so when I talked to him on the phone later on that week, I would not sound like a blathering idiot when it came to The Wall. And just a magnificent piece of music, and very twisted in a lot of ways, but a magnificent piece of music. So at number 5 is Pink Floyd's The Wall. Number 4, Bat Out of Hell from Meatloaf. Songs by Steinman. Jim wrote this. I think this is the first album that they did together. They wrote with each other. But again, let's pull Paradise by the Dashboard Light out, because that's the one song everybody really gets into on this album. Like all the others, solidifying my moving from pop music to rock music. Just really, as I start educating myself on rock music and really enjoying it, I can't help myself. It's a great, great, great record. Leaving aside Paradise by the Dashboard Light, this is one of those records that you can listen to from side A, track 1, all the way through to the last track on side B. It's a story. It's exceptionally well written by Steinman. All of those things. And the artwork is just exquisite. Everything that you wanted as a teenager, your rock albums to be, this was in there, and it didn't exclude 2 ballads, which were great. I love them. Again, and these are sappy ballads. Well, they're not sappy, but it made it okay to listen to ballads as well. So I don't recall, I know I didn't buy it when it first came out. As a matter of fact, I made fun of the guy's name. And then they started playing Paradise by the Dashboard Light, and it was, okay, I like that. And then we just kind of kept going and going and going. And you know what? At the end of the day, I absolutely still love this album. I think I have like 3 copies of this thing. I just love the record. So, at number 4, Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell. Number 3, End of the Century. This is kind of where we get into sappy personal territory, if you will. So, End of the Century came out in 1980, and you know, on this album, Rock and Roll High School was the big crossover hit. There was another hit that didn't get a lot of pop play, but got a ton of play on my local rock station, and that was This Is Rock and Roll Radio, obviously. But this album I really love, and it's on number 3 for a very personal reason, and that is in the summer of 1980, the end of the summer. I was just about I had just come back from Europe, from Italy, spending my summer there, and was getting ready to start our school year, and I was going to be a senior. And I drove my car to see a couple of buddies of mine who I hadn't seen all summer, obviously, because I was away. And as I'm pulling out of their driveway in my car, in my Chevy Chevette, no less, Rock and Roll Radio comes on, and I'm loving that song. I'm just absolutely loving that song. And I love the album, I love the song, I love that memory of, it's the end of the 70s, it's it's the end of the century, and I'm going to be a senior in high school. It's 1980 now. It's all new. Everything is cool. You have everything in front of you. You can taste it. Sadly, the personal memory of this is the 2 friends whose home I was at when that song came out and I left for it, passed away very, very young. And it's a sad but great album, great song. First Ramones album I ever bought. By then I was pretty much a punk rocker, and I love the Ramones to this day. But that album, that period, going into your senior year of high school is just so amazing. At number 2, Boston's debut album. Look, this is a perfect album as far as I'm concerned. I mean, just perfect. Every song, amazingly written. Musically speaking, it's on par with anything, rock or otherwise. Artistically speaking, the cover is astounding. Psychedelically speaking, it's cool because if you turn it over this way, hey look, it's a guitar. No, seriously, try it. Look, it's a guitar. I know most of you already knew it was a guitar because you can just see the fretboard and everything, but if you've never done it, flip over your Boston album, and you know what, let me do it this way because that way there's no glare. Flip over your Boston album, and yeah, look, it's a guitar. I mean, seriously, it's a cool guitar. Boston's debut album, okay, again, perfect album. Definitely the album that, a transformative album from pop to rock. Just everything about that album is, I love it. Everything. Music, art, band, vibe of cool, everything else. What is so great about that album and Budokan too, didn't matter who your friends were or weren't, didn't matter whether you were a jock, didn't matter whether you were a head, didn't matter whether you were a gearhead or if you were an honor student, or if you were a ghost. None of those things mattered. We were all different, but Boston, the debut record, Budokan, 80% to 85% of everybody in my high school loved those records. So that was the unifying thread amongst all the factions of the students in my school. Again, very small school, had 98 kids in my graduating class. We all knew each other. Most of the time we liked each other, sometimes we hated each other, but by and large the unifying threads across the board were albums and music. That was how important it was to us. And growing up, which is why I still collect records today, and which is why I did my top 100 advice of memories. If I reflect back on my life, I have a lot of interests. If you ask my wife, I have far too many interests, but the one factor that has been with me ever since, and I'm not a musician, but the one factor that has been the one thing, the one constant throughout my life has always been music. Just always been. You know, my memories are tied by and large to music. Hey, I was doing this and that song came on, or that song triggers that memory there. So that's why this top 100 for me is all about memories. Number 1 album. Most of you are not going to be surprised. London Calling by The Clash. I can go on about the record, but I'm going to suffice it to say this record for me, not life changer, that's a little bit too melodramatic, but it did change my perceptions. This album, one of the first albums that had social significance in the lyrics. I mean, yeah, Barry Maguire, I get that too. But I grew up and I came of age in the late 70s. I mean, the 80s really is when I grew up, but the late 70s, dark time period, formulated a lot of my personality because that was when I was very impressionable. London Calling, I just got it. There was a lot of anger in the late 70s, mid 70s, you know, the latter part of the 70s. There was just a lot of anger still. A lot of anger at the government. We had Nixon. Watergate was still fresh in everybody's mind. You know, you had the energy crisis, 2 of them actually. You know, you had unemployment and interest rates were through the roof, and it really did seem like the world was teetering on the edge of extinction. The United States and the Soviet Union at the time were right in the midst of the Cold War. I mean, you know, it hadn't gotten any better. We really were at. It was very, very difficult for us in a lot of ways. So, with all that said, it's easy to be overwhelmed, and these guys encapsulated what I was feeling and put into words because I couldn't. But I certainly could relate to what they were saying and how they played, and the fact that they weren't the greatest musicians, but still played in front of large audiences. They were just, you know, regular guys, basically. 4 regular guys. And great album. I'm probably not alone in thinking this is a tremendous record. It is. I probably am in the minority who think it should be number 1 on your top 100. But for me, an album that changed an outlook and the way I view things to this day. Pretty important record for me. Also, I've heard a lot of great stuff about London Calling from everybody who's like, you know, hey, look, there's actually 19 songs, not 18. The hidden hit, the one that made it, ba-bop, ba-bop, ba-bop. The fact that it's a 2-record set. The Clash wanted to make it a 2-record set because they wanted people to save some money. The one thing I very rarely hear, and it's just the most obvious thing to me, how it looks exactly like Elvis. The fonts, the cover, I mean, everything about it. It's the one thing I never hear. And it's like always been like the most blatantly obvious thing to me. So I got a kick out of that, so I wanted to bring that up. Okay, so that ends our top 100. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun doing it. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me some comments. Let me know what you think. Please subscribe if you really like it. And I really have no idea what I'm going to do next. I mean, it's been 10 weeks since I started doing this, and so I really have no idea what on earth to do next. But nonetheless, thank you so much. Have a great week, everyone. Have a happy Sunday afternoon. Have a great Sunday dinner if you haven't already had it. And I'll speak to everyone soon. Cheers.